Hello again, this is Rich from MissionExcelCoach.com giving you tech tips to get through your day. Today I'm going to show you how to avoid certain error messages, or at least how to display error messages from displaying on the screen. You probably are aware that if you have an error message on your screen, that error message will propagate to any future call or reference to that cell. So I'm going to display with you, go through with you a very simple example using averages and just show you kind of how to avoid that, how you might be doing it already, and then show you the IFERROR command or function to alleviate the presence of these error messages. So let's use a simple example. I've got 8 people here and some golf scores that I've just made up. And of course, we're all familiar with the average function. I can just average the cells here from C4 to E4. I can propagate them down via the autofill, and you can see this ugly message that occurs when I try to divide by 0. There's no denominator here, so I'm dividing by 0. So you can see the presence of these errors. You can see why we're getting it. Of course, we all know why. And what some people will do is they'll use the if statement. They'll say, well, if I'm going to replace this, if the sum of C4 to E4 equals 0, then display nothing. Otherwise, display the average of C4 to E4, and we're going to get an average. And of course, this works. It's a little clunky though. I don't particularly like that, having these long kind of awkward functions here. And of course, we know that we can use average if to take an average as well. But I'd like to avoid that, and I'd like to show you something called IFERROR. So I'm going to replace this formula with IFERROR. And the syntax for IFERROR is you're going to print the value that you want to have printed if there's no error, and then what you would like to see returned if there is an error. Now, by default, this is optional, can be left blank, and if you have an error, it will be left blank. You can also choose to print something like a dash or a series of dashes to indicate that a calculation was made. What we're going to do is we're going to type in now our formula, average C4 to E4. That's what I want to display if there is no error. But if there is an error, well, I know it's optional, but I'm going to say I want to leave it blank. I like to type it in personally, so when I have this, I can propagate this formula down. No errors, perfect. Now, for example, if I wanted to change that to be, I like to do sometimes a series of dashes. Then in the case where there is an error, you'll see now that these blanks have been replaced with 3 dashes where there are no scores. So just a quick example of how you can use IFERROR to avoid printing out error messages. I didn't want this to be a long and detailed video, but just to give you an idea of how to use it. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I'll be happy to get back to you. But hopefully this helped you to avoid and be a little more functional, a little more efficient in your Excel and Google Sheets work.